Welcome to the Becoming Mindful podcast. Today, we'll be talking about what mindfulness is and where we are in our journey to mindfulness, as well as what we bring to this conversation. I am Maria.
And I'm Jackie. And we are Becoming Mindful.
All right. Welcome, everyone. And we're so glad you're listening to our podcast.
Thanks for joining us on this journey as we explore mindfulness and dive into the topic a bit further.
As this is our first episode and also our first podcast we've ever made together, we wanted to talk a little bit about why we're doing this podcast. Our vision for this podcast is to understand and inspire mindfulness practices in our lives as well as in our audience's lives. We want to explore the application of mindfulness in the real world. And all of this we want to base on research and firsthand experiences.
Yeah, we really hope that this podcast that we're creating is going to open the conversation around mindfulness more broadly. Right now, the texts and most of the research around mindfulness, the field is really dominated by men and mainly academics in really privileged circles. So while recognizing that Maria and I are both privileged in many ways as well, we want to bring the female experience into the conversation and really elevate a younger generation's voice and what this practice means to us specifically.
Exactly.
We're going to try to keep this a really well-rounded conversation, though, so we will invite your input into our conversations, and we'll also bring in research and other experts who have insight into mindfulness to really grow this topic and explore the depths of it.
Yeah, we want to invite everyone listening to it to chime in as well. We want some feedback, of course, and we want to make this interesting and bring up topics that are important for not just us, but mainly we want to go into our journey, right? And what our steps are to figure out this big thing called mindfulness.
On that note, we'd like to give you a little bit of background on who we are and what our backgrounds are. So, Maria, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am originally from Germany and I live in the US now with my husband and a very rambunctious toddler. Professionally, I am in the IT space, the computer nerd, I guess. But one of my really big passions is art. And I am an artist and I do paint mainly watercolors at the moment. In addition, I love crafting, gardening, and everything related to nature. So being in nature, just a really big part of what I like. We also have 2 dogs, and with a household with many hobbies, an engineer husband who also is an introvert like me. So everything together really makes mindfulness something that I look forward to exploring with you, Jackie. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
All right. I'm really passionate about photography and music, nature, and yoga. So you can usually find me indulging in one of those at any given time. But I'm very curious. I love to explore new things and new places with my husband and my dog. My life has taken a lot of different directions, and mindfulness practices have really helped to steer my explorations in positive directions. Mindfulness keeps me in alignment, and that's why I work to share these teachings. So I'm excited about the conversations we are going to be having.
Yeah, what I forgot about is I'm definitely also very passionate about different places in the world and traveling and the exploration of the sciencey part of everything is also something that's a passion for me, which we definitely want to bring into this podcast as well, is searching some things and making sure we look at it also from that kind of background.
Absolutely. There's so much ancient wisdom around mindfulness, but there's also, especially recently, so much really scientific studies that have been done in recent years. We can find the overlaps there and the way that they complement each other. So we'll bring in the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, as you heard, we have poked our noses into this topic a little bit. What I want to do is talk a little bit about how far we are on this journey already, so you get a feel for what might be our next steps or what our exposure to mindfulness has been so far. Because both of us are on the journey. We started the journey. We're not on the same level yet, but I would definitely say we're starting. Jackie, why don't you give us a little bit of background of your exposure to mindfulness?
Sure. I'm a yoga and meditation instructor, so I am lucky enough to work on these practices that kind of exercise mindfulness muscles every day. But it's taken a long journey to get here. Like a lot of people, I used to live very busy and very distracted. There's always a lot going on and trying to, totally full agenda every day. But then I found myself moving to Colorado for all the reasons that everyone loves to move to Colorado. It's a beautiful, amazing place. But what I really found when I moved there was a lot of isolation, which was actually a really good thing. It led to a lot of introspection and less noise in my life. And so I fell into some mindfulness practices, and I really started noticing that they brought healing to the lifestyle that I'd been living for so long. So I started seeking out intentionally, looking for research and more information on it, and really looking for edification. And that's where I am now, I would say. It's a constantly humbling, but simultaneously very nurturing practice. I'm fumbling through it. So, Maria, I know your path is a little bit different. I'd love it if you could share how you have found yourself hosting a mindfulness podcast.
Yes. So I definitely was interested in meditation and mindfulness for a while, but more on maybe a more shallow level. Being younger, without children, mindfulness wasn't necessarily a priority. I wasn't a busy life person either, but I guess it's more of the opposite of what you've experienced, where it's more of, I don't know how to describe it, not necessarily apathy, but you're not really recognizing stuff, you're just kind of living. And getting older, it started, you get this kind of discontent and anxiety about a lot of things in your life, how things are going and how you're living your life, and just in general. It seems like that. And I also wanted to change some habits that I wasn't happy with. So that's where my introduction to mindfulness started. I looked at this book from Leo Babauta, who is a Zen blogger, journalist, and author, and it's called Zen Habits. And he also has a blog with the same name. It was mostly around changing your habits and how to do that in a sustainable way. But it did introduce me to mindfulness meditation and this concept of a non-judgmental acceptance of discomfort, which is really a very interesting topic, I think. Definitely related to mindfulness. I think we're definitely going to go into that at some point more deeply. But then with that, not that I was super successful in changing my habits, otherwise maybe I wouldn't necessarily be at this stage yet with mindfulness. I don't know, but it's definitely a process. And then there were two more reasons. One really big one, I became a mother. So now you're introducing a lot more noise into my life, right? And also becoming a mother as to what am I giving my child on their way. So the whole parenting part, I looked at a lot of parenting books, and One of the ones that was always recommended very much was Janet Lansbury. It's called No Bad Kids. Janet Lansbury used to be an actress in the 70s, became an educator, and she has this podcast called Unruffled. And it goes really into this whole peaceful parenting approach where you're really, again, with the non-judgmental observing and not reacting right away. So there's this thread that starts to emerge now. One of the other things was I was looking into the Montessori approach because I really liked the Montessori approach, which was coined by Maria Montessori, an Italian physician in the 40s. And she had this new approach for education that is very child-led. So it's all around observing what the child really needs and what the child is interested in. And so it's a very, very complex but very interesting topic. Again, I think is very related to mindfulness. Another parenting book I was reading was called The Whole Brain Child by Dr. Dan Siegel. And he also has a version or has a book for the adult side, which is called Mindsight. And it's all about the brain development as well as the integration of your brain regions. And there's a lot of mindfulness in that one too. It's more the scientific approach to that topic.
That's a fascinating book.
Definitely have to reread that again, but he's looking from the parenting side. That's how I found him, how you interact with your child and the emotional regulation, essentially. So that's what that's all about. But then there's another reason, another topic that led me to mindfulness. This book, The Altruism Book by Mathieu Ricard, which you actually introduced to me. So altruism and how you interact with other beings and other humans. And I feel that has a lot to do with mindfulness too.
Yeah, and altruism is such a fascinating topic, and I'm sure we'll go into it a lot more because you're right, it's very much aligned with mindfulness, and I feel like it's emergent from mindfulness. Bring in mindfulness practices and you're drawn toward more altruism.
Absolutely. So that's my background. All of these examples, all of these areas require mindfulness, I believe. So that's how I got to the topic. And now, as I mentioned, a lot of books here. My background is very theoretical. Not really, because I'm doing some of these things in my parenting and so on, right? And applying them somewhat, but definitely want to incorporate a lot more of that and want to dive deeper into mindfulness. Not like you had a little bit more exposure. I feel you had more exposure to mindfulness than I do. And I would like to embrace that a little bit more into my day-to-day life, of course.
I love your journey toward mindfulness to explore these topics as a new mother. That's incredibly ambitious, and I think you've taken a really intentional approach to learning mindfulness. I think I can learn a lot from you too.
Thanks.
I think a lot of people can relate to parts of both of our stories and both of our backgrounds. Now you have a little bit of an idea of what our motives were and what brought us to this conversation and to what we're trying to do here. So let's get a baseline now and make sure we're all on the same page as to what mindfulness is and what exactly we are talking about here. So, Maria, how would you define mindfulness?
Very good question, because it's a very big word for being just one word, right? So for me, I feel mindfulness is all about awareness, being aware of things, living in the present moment, and taking in all of these impressions to your senses, not only from the outside, but also from the inside, like your bodily functions, your feelings, and the world around you, nature, other people, and their intentions and actions. And all of that in a very non-judgmental way. That's my definition of mindfulness, how I view it. So awareness, present moment, and the non-judgmental component, those are really my keys for what I feel mindfulness is. Obviously, there's tons of different definitions, so yours might be a little bit different.
I completely agree with everything that you just said. And I think that non-judgmental component that you mentioned is really key. Like removing our own influence or our own story around a moment and allowing it to have autonomy, allow it to just happen. And I think that is what allows ourselves to remain calm and peaceful because we're not attaching ourselves to what's going on around us. We're just an observer. On that note, let's talk about some of the prominent figures in mindfulness and what they have to say about it. Because I'd like to bring in Sylvia Boorstein, who agrees with this definition as well. Sylvia Boorstein has been teaching mindfulness since the 80s, and she said, mindfulness is the aware, balanced acceptance of the present experience.
Oh, wow. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, I know. It's so heavy, but it's also so appealing. I love it to experience content in every moment. And yeah, the way she puts it, it's so simple, and yet it's really hard and complex.
Right. I like it. Mindfulness is the aware, balanced acceptance of the present experience. Wow. Yeah, definitely. That's it, right? Now, there's other people that have their thoughts on mindfulness. I wanted to bring a quote from Eckhart Tolle, who is a spiritual teacher and a best-selling author. And he said, realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have. Make it the primary focus of your life.
That's a really heavy statement, too.
Yeah, right. It's the present moment again, right? You have to be there in the present moment.
Yeah, and make it the primary focus of your life. We live so much in the past and the future to make the present moment your primary focus. I know I have a lot of work to do there.
Just thinking about what we've talked about so far in this episode, right? We talked about what have we done? What are our goals for the future, right?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting because a lot of our lives revolves around that, and making the present moment the primary focus of your life is very heavy. It is heavy.
It's a tall order.
Very interesting. But you also have to take all of that with a little bit of humor. You can't just be super heavy on this. And actually, Eckhart Tolle is a funny guy this way too. He makes a lot of jokes. And when asked about mindfulness and the word mindfulness, he said in one of his videos, mindfulness has become almost acceptable, more acceptable than presence. It is the same thing, of course. But he said, I don't use mindfulness because it implies that your mind is full. So he's essentially making a joke about the word mindfulness, and his preference is the word presence.
There seems to be these people who have studied mindfulness for so long. They all seem to share this lightness, this humor. I think it's their humility that they find the humor in so many things.
I've noticed that too. There's always like some sort of little joke in these videos and these books. It's really funny. But again, even this talks about the present moment again, presence, but also this observation part of it, not acting, observing.
Yeah, becoming the observer. I have to bring in Thich Nhat Hanh, who I'm sure I will mention again. He's a revered spiritual leader. He's a peaceful activist. He's a monk, and he's just really influenced the teachings of mindfulness. One of the many wise things that he said was, when we are mindful, deeply in touch with the present moment, our understanding of what is going on deepens, and we begin to be filled with acceptance, joy, peace, and love. I thought that was so beautiful. And he's describing that mindfulness is a method of finding peace through presence. And it feels so attainable.
Yeah, but also joy and love too. This is really friendliness to it too. Yeah, I like that a lot.
There really is a whole component of compassion and kindness there. Maria, you mentioned Dan Siegel earlier. What does he have to say as far as mindfulness from a more Western science-based perspective?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. So Dan Siegel He's a psychiatrist, and so definitely more scientific view on this. But he also has a definition, or actually multiple definitions, for mindfulness. And I'm just going to give you a summary of what he said because it would be a little bit too long to give you the full quote. So he said, mindfulness is a form of brain hygiene.
I love that.
Isn't that funny?
That's perfect.
Okay, you brush your teeth, you brush your brain. You clean out your brain with mindfulness. I love it too. So he said, generally, there's three big ways of defining mindfulness. So you have number one, just plain English definition, conscientious, caring, and intentional. The word mindfulness, right? And the second one, what he calls the contemplative form, would be to be present and on purpose without judgment. Very much dives with what we've heard so far too, right?
Yeah.
And then the third one, he calls creative mindfulness. It is not coming to premature closures on assumptions, but remaining open-minded. So that one is somewhat of an outlier to what we've heard before, I think. I guess it falls into the non-judgmental part, but also that it's more of a scientific view on it, right? A scientific method is like that. You are always open to new things, new findings.
Yeah. Like you said, it's a different way to say non-judgmental, but it's more actionable. We're not coming to premature closures. I think I can wrap my head around that and understand how to execute that. So I think that's a little more tangible.
Right.
We really deeply respect the teachers that we have and will continue to mention in this podcast. But we've also noticed that through our research that these modern sages, many of them are from a very privileged class, and that helps perpetuate a lot of misconceptions about mindfulness, like it's elitist or unattainable in some ways. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the misconceptions around mindfulness.
Yeah, there's quite a few. I think the biggest one for me personally is this whole elitist, what you mentioned. So you have this elitist, closed group of people, right? That somehow you can't access as a normal person. You have these sages that are mostly white males, maybe with a wife at home that does all the domestic labor for them so they can do their thing and contemplate things and philosophize about things. And it feels elitist and closed and not accessible to a lot of other people.
Yeah, I know the images, at least you'd see on social media, they just seem very unrealistic a lot of times. Even if you're looking at an image of someone sitting quietly, undisturbed at some tropical meditation retreat, it's not really realistic for most of us if that's what mindfulness is. Mindfulness in the messiness of life, too.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to showcase real mindfulness in a picture.
Absolutely.
But I think a lot of the time you see these images on the screen or on TV or Instagram, it's almost like a commoditizing. It's some sort of product.
It's a commercialized version of mindfulness.
And I think that's one of the misconceptions too, is that it's something to sell, a product. Yeah, I think another one that I've always felt is it sounds like some sort of fad thing, like a diet, some sort of quick fix thing.
Yeah.
The quick fix to happiness, shine and rainbows and perfect just through a little meditation here and there.
It's just a couple of positive mantras and you're on your way.
Right. Just snap your fingers, do this 3 times a day, 3 minutes a day, whatever. It seems fake.
There's a perception that it's a passive activity and that it's easy or that it's about being apathetic, but it's really the opposite of that. I think to be present and to be honest about the world is really difficult. I think it takes a lot of work and time to build the resilience that's actually needed to support that level of humility that comes with these practices. And maybe that's why the people that we follow and that we've been watching, they have that sense of humor and that lightness to it. because it's just so there and open and in front of their face.
But I think realistically, mindfulness is not any of that. And it goes a lot deeper than that. And it can have a very big impact on your life. I don't know, Jackie, what do you think for you personally? How can mindfulness positively impact your life?
There are so many ways mindfulness can impact my life or the whole world. Okay, so there's been a lot of research recently around mindfulness, and we've learned a lot about the effects that mindfulness practices can realistically have on a person. And we've found that it can increase empathy and increase compassion. It improves mental health and lowers stress. It helps to alleviate feelings of suffering and make us more aware of ourselves. It makes us more aware of each other and makes us more aware of the entire world that we're a part of. It has been known to increase happiness, make us feel freer, and make us more accepting. So if the pharmaceutical industry could package that into a pill, we would all be lining up to take it, right?
Yeah, but they better not. That's not.
Right.
That's the last thing we want. Oh, God.
Thinking about all of those effects, if we could distribute those more widely in our world, we would all feel more connected. We'd be mentally healthier. We'd be compassionate leaders. We'd have more resilient activists. And so I just think that the impacts of integrating mindfulness from the biggest problems that our world faces to the personal struggles that we each individually work through, it could help all of us in so many ways and transform so many of the things that we struggle with as a society and as individuals. I hope that doesn't sound too idealistic. I know I'm an optimist, but
No, it doesn't.
I know I dream of a world where we have mindfulness practices in our schools and we're teaching children these helpful life skills that they can use to navigate the journey to adulthood and their whole lives. The Dalai Lama actually said, if every 8-year-old in the world was taught meditation, we would eliminate violence from the world in 1 generation. Maria, as a parent, what are your thoughts around mindfulness and how we raise our children?
Yeah, I have to agree with what you say and what the Dalai Lama said, because I believe that mindfulness can help breaking cycles of the previous generation's parenting methods, which often were detrimental, if not even traumatic, to children and the following generations, because that's the gift that keeps on giving, right? It just goes on, generational trauma and things that people have to unpack. And a lot of times people do not have the tools. And I think mindfulness practiced by the parent, and if that's taught in schools or early on, that's just something that you can take with your whole life. It gives you things like emotional regulation, and mindfulness can definitely help there. And you can have a nice little mindfulness toolbox that you can give on to your children and your grandchildren and make the world a better place. Have a happier and more content life for your child and future generations.
That's beautiful. I think modern life is constantly teaching us how to not be mindful or asking us not to be mindful. As we were talking about earlier, we're always having to plan and be in control and be organized. Those are all useful things, but they need to be balanced with presence and living more in the moment. Slower, more intentional pace can be viewed as lazy sometimes in our society, and qualities like kindness can be viewed as a weakness. Even just being present can be threatening to what we might call productivity. Actual execution of mindfulness is very foreign to our culture, so we need to practice it as a discipline and work on it as a skill as we would any skill. So there's constantly things that are bringing us out of mindfulness. And so I think we just need to be disciplined about working toward it. But I think it's worth it. It's worth putting in the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like you said, how it's viewed as lazy or weakness and things like that, that definitely something to see in the current society, at least Western society, where people feel they cannot just sit still and do nothing. It's almost like they're scared of doing nothing or not being busy or being by themselves. That's definitely things that we have to learn, and where mindfulness comes into play and can teach that.
Yeah. I remember when I first started doing yoga, the pose Shavasana, where you're simply laying silently for an extended period of time, was one of the hardest poses. And I think it's one of the hardest poses for so many people because it's just simply lying there and being for an extended period of time for several minutes. And it's really fascinating how difficult that is. But it is.
Right. Just any meditation, a lot of people have issues with that when they start because suddenly you're doing nothing. You're just sitting there with your thoughts and not trailing off in those thoughts, too. It's very hard for people because we're taught to the exact opposite. But I think mindfulness really is the key to a content life. And I'm saying content because I try not to say happiness too much, because happiness is really not something that you can sustainably achieve. It's not something you have constantly happiness. That's not realistic, right? And it's not really desirable either. That's why I'm trying to choose the word content.
It's an important distinction.
Right. I think so too, because chasing your happiness or finding your happiness is another form of not being mindful, I feel, because you're looking to be happy, but then you can't really ever sustainably achieve happiness.
You're always reaching for that.
So if you're content or in the present moment, then maybe it's a rephrasing of what happiness is, right?
Yeah, I like that.
So living the present moment and experiencing the present moment and not missing what truth the world holds, not letting it fly by you so you can observe things. Also, the observing versus the reacting part of mindfulness and the non-judgmental part of mindfulness, I think, is very important. So you can see other people's views and don't just react to them. So you can actually be a better human being. I think you have more compassion and more kindness because you can actually see other people, not just yourself, right?
Absolutely. To be present with someone when you're speaking with them or when you're being with them, it's such an incredibly respectful way of interacting with someone.
And it's really hard. And there's other things that play a role where it makes it harder. But yeah, I think definitely compassion, be more compassionate, be more kind, not projecting yourself, learning that you do not project yourself or your own feelings onto someone or something else. And the other big part I feel is the awareness part of your own body. So the inside view, right? So you can see what's going on, your feelings, your physical bodily functions, which I think can have a big impact on your physical as well as your mental health.
Absolutely. The mind-body connection.
I think both of us feel that mindfulness is very important. Obviously, we do. Otherwise, we wouldn't do a podcast about mindfulness and wouldn't try to be on this journey. Now, obviously, because it's so important for us that we even started a podcast, we really hope that our listeners can also benefit from it and being part of this journey with us.
We hope you can see the positive impact that integrating mindfulness into our society could have on the well-being of everyone and everything on this planet.
Absolutely. Yeah, you heard us briefly mention a lot of topics. We like to dive deeper on those in the future. So things like meditation, mindful parenting, and some of these people that we mentioned, the teachers and leaders in the mindfulness movement. But there's a lot of other topics that are adjacent that we want to dive into, things like quality, mental and physical health, and a lot more. So those we want to explore in future episodes. So next month, we have chosen to dive into the roots of mindfulness and explore the history behind it, as well as some of the people who have gotten it to where it is at now.
So we hope you continue to join us and learn with us through this ongoing and open conversation. You can find more information about how to subscribe and links to everything that we talked about today in our show notes and on our website, becomingmindfulpodcast.com, and on our social media at Becoming Mindful Podcast.
Yeah, thank you for listening. And as we said before, if you like this episode, want to hear more, please come back, subscribe, and we also appreciate any comments, questions, and reviews.
Be well, friends.